Hey guys, today we're going to talk about my process for creating a stream of high quality content and what lessons you can take away. Stay tuned. So today's topic comes from two questions I got from you guys, all about my process for creating content and deciding what formats I'm going to use in order to best get my message out. So for me, it always starts with an idea, and an idea worth writing about is going to have two ingredients. One is I think it has to be valuable to the audience, and two, I feel like I have to have something new to say. In terms of valuable to your audience, the more that you know your audience, the more that you interact with them, the better you'll be able to actually figure out what's going to help them achieve their goals. And in fact, one of the things that I'm finding is that the longer and more I'm interacting with you guys, that is basically feeding me all the topics that I could ever want to write about. In terms of stuff that's interesting to me to write, I cannot write something if I feel like I'm just regurgitating things I've heard before. That doesn't mean that I have to come up with something totally original. In fact, I probably could count the fully original ideas I've had on less than one hand. But what it does mean is there has to be something new there, a new analogy, a new example, a new twist, some sort of thing to get me excited and feel like I'm going to contribute something really meaningful to the table. And then once I have a core topic, once I have a basic idea that I'm excited to write about, a lot of what I'm thinking about is how am I going to execute on this? So you can always, and you need to think about the logic of the argument. What do you need to establish in order to bring somebody to the conclusion you want? But at the same time, you have to be thinking about how are you actually going to execute on that in a way that's interesting, memorable, and actually persuasive. Because you can have the best outline on earth, and if you can't actually execute on it, you're not going to achieve your goal. For example, when Mark Andreessen came out with his essay, It's Time to Build, I got a message from my friend Greg that said, hey, this could be a really good topic for you to write on. And this was not the way it usually plays out, but basically what happened was I went to bed having no clue what I was going to write about, and I woke up with a title in mind, We Don't Deserve Builders. And that alone was enough to say, yes, I actually want to write this piece. But I remember as I was taking that walk from my bed down to my office thinking, all right, well, how am I actually going to make this interesting? And in particular, a lot of what I'm thinking about is what's the way into the issue? How do I set this up in a really compelling way? And I recall the story of my experience in high school going to see the South Park movie and the audience cheering after somebody shot gratuitously Bill Gates. And I thought, yeah, this is going to be the way in. After that, everything was straightforward. I jotted down some notes, a really rough outline. In fact, I was able to dig up those notes, and I don't even think that what I ended up writing totally followed it that much. But then it just sort of spilled out, and I did a few lines of editing. Now, this is definitely not what I typically teach. In terms of what I encourage people to do is to go through a much more rigorous process of thinking, outlining, drafting, revising. And the difference is this. So first of all, I've been doing this for 20 years. I couldn't have done this 5 years ago, but as you gain experience, then often you can hold an outline in your head and make sure that you have a reliable structure. But even there, I can't do that with pieces that are intended to be persuasive in kind of an enduring, fundamental way. And one of the things that's important about what I do, which makes it a little bit different than what I teach, is that I'm not, in most of the content I'm creating, attempting to be persuasive. I'm attempting to be informative of people who are already in basic alignment with me. And that's just a much easier assignment because when you're engaging in persuasion, you're engaging in what Alex Epstein has likened to a combination lock, where every single number has to fall into place perfectly and the whole thing opens. And if you get one wrong, it doesn't open. And in that kind of scenario, you need a much more kind of precise, thought out and strategic process and strategic outline and structure, and every little detail can count. Whereas what I'm trying to do is externalize as much of my ideas as possible for people who want to use them in their own persuasive endeavors. Now, in terms of what format a piece of content is going to take for me, I can't say that there's a fully strategic way that I think about that. I basically think about it this way, which is most stuff I default towards video, obviously, aside from my podcast. And it's for new big ideas that I want to be enduring that I'm going to turn to writing, because writing certainly takes longer in most cases for me to produce, but that's also the sphere in which I'm most effective. But the truth is that format really doesn't matter. You should pick the format that's more comfortable for you, at least for that particular type of content. The other thing I'll say about it is that the way in which you publish your content, the real key is, assuming it's of high quality, it needs to be contextual to that platform. So, for example, one of the mistakes I was making, which I think I've talked about in other videos, is, I would go to Twitter and post a link to here's an essay that I wrote. But in Twitter, people are engaging with tweets that they can read in 2 seconds and flip through. And so you're really not being contextual if you're just handing a link and saying, go read this. And so what I've started doing is, let me provide value on Twitter. And so it will be, for any article, let me condense it into a really good Twitter thread. And then at the end, if people want more, they can follow the link. And I've noticed that that gets a far greater amount of engagement. Then, for example, I've started, instead of just linking to the essays on LinkedIn, I'll post my essays in their native platform. Same with my videos. With Facebook, I'm actually violating this rule, though I'm doing so for a specific reason, which is, Facebook video obviously would be a really effective way to put up my videos, but right now I'm very focused on growing my YouTube channel, and so I'm trying to bring everybody to YouTube, and at least in my personal case, I've noticed I get pretty good conversions from my Facebook page to YouTube via a link. So for now, that's working out really well for me, but in general, you want to be as native and contextual to the platform as you can, but at the end of the day, the only thing that really matters is that your content is highly relevant and highly valuable to your audience, and then everything else is just dressing. So the major thing I would highlight is this, which is I've experimented with different processes throughout my career, and I encourage you to experiment. We should never be a slave to a process. But if you're not getting the results that you want, if you're not just blowing away people with your writing, if you're not getting the views you want and the engagement you want with your videos, experiment with a more rigorous process that probably matches something like I've talked about in the past. Because what I usually see people do is that they come up with reasons why they don't want to try a new process. I don't know how to outline. I don't like outlining. I'm better just sitting down and riffing. And that might be true in the sense of it's a more enjoyable writing experience for you. But what I've certainly found is it's not necessarily always the most effective, and that you can actually find yourself enjoying, say, outlining, which is where most people have their problems, if you really practice it and get good at it. So experiment, don't be a slave to the process, but don't just accept your default process as something that's inherent to you if it's not getting you where you want to be. Because as much as I've kind of resisted outlining over the years, if I had not become a really good outliner, I wouldn't be able to effectively write well-structured pieces today without doing a very kind of tight, rigorous outline. So that's it for today. I hope you found that helpful or at least interesting. Make sure, if you like this video, to like it on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and as always, best way to follow my work is to sign up for the newsletter at donswriting.com. Talk to you next time.